Cool. Welcome everyone to the first ever virtual Euphonium Summit, now International Euphonium Summit, with guest artists and composers, conductors from around the globe. And we'd like to welcome Dr. Gail Robertson from Central Arkansas, University of Central Arkansas. And if you're not privy to the transcripts yet, go ahead and register for those transcripts for the really rich content we just got through speaking over and diving into. You really want to pick those up. It gives you some really awesome insights about her career that we won't really get to in these recorded lives, but those transcriptions in the book that'll eventually come out of this, with all these wonderful artists, composers on every single level, you really want to pick that up. And yes, it's going to be amazing. So with further ado, thank you so much, Dr. Gail Robertson, for joining me in this invitation to contribute.
Thanks for inviting me.
Cool. And she does have an amazing record, and I will go as much as into it without having to refer to it so much as to check the links below, because all those links will be below so you can dive deeper. So Dr. Gail Robertson has a distinguished reputation as a euphonium artist, teacher, soloist, and clinician. She has also garnered worldwide attention for leadership, work as a composer, arranger, as a musical artist, and talent is above reproach, not above reproach. She has served as associate professor of tuba and euphonium at the University of Central Arkansas. She is the former head of the jazz area, where she also coordinated jazz events, conducted the top jazz ensembles. In addition to teaching, she performs as a tubist in the faculty brass quintet, Pinnacle Brass. This goes back to, and I do kind of chop up the introductions, because it's really important to get the gist of the depth of a person beyond what there is said online, and to get to know that it's more than just the words. It's the personality, the drive, that passion. And you'll see that in the words that are transcribed in the what's beyond this recording, as well as what's on her wall behind her. I mean, come on, y'all. Look at that wall. Look at that passion on her face. Good gravy. Wow. I didn't even get to see that beforehand, y'all. That's gorgeous.
It's a little crazy.
So I want to just dive right into it. We're blessed to have her actually accept a two-part series on this interview. So y'all are really y'all are gonna get a treat here with this recording, and with wow. She has held so many positions and presidentship, I guess you could say presidentships, International Women's Conference. I don't even know.
ITEA, yeah.
Yeah, there's so much. Y'all need to read through it. It's going to take a lot of time, and I really would love to get to the questions.
People told me if you want to be president of ITEA or organizations, just answer emails.
Yes, and those emails is what really perpetuates faculty members and musicians, artists all over the world to contribute their journey, like what we've provided on this International Euphonium Summit, an opportunity and platform stage to bridge that gap between where these beginner artists are, beginner euphonium artists, to musicians and family members across the board. And so, further ado, what age did you start playing euphonium?
Well, I began as a saxophone player in the middle school band after playing the recorder in elementary school. It wasn't until the end of my junior year that I started playing euphonium, and it was when one of the seniors was graduating from high school, and was during commencement band. As a matter of fact, there wasn't a euphonium player in the commencement band for my high school when we were getting ready to play. And so I realized that I could play the pomp and circumstance bass line on the tuba, because I had switched to tuba in the 9th grade, or I could play the beautiful melodies that the euphonium had. And I don't have my horn in my office because it's at my house, because I practice home at summer. But you know, there was so many reasons to switch. But it was like, I think the end. I think maybe the end of my sophomore year or the end of my junior years when I made the switch.
Okay, so
And there's no regrets. Yeah, so I had, I think, just 1 year of playing euphonium. I think it was my senior year of high school.
So did you start on like alto sax then?
Yeah, I was an alto saxophone player in beginning band, but my claim to fame, if you see me now playing saxophone ever again, is normally on the Barry sax. I played Barry sax when I was in high school and then through college, and even when I was at Indiana University as a master's euphonium student, I played in one of the top. You know, they had 4 big bands at IU. I was one of the Barry sax players there.
Wow, that's amazing.
And Harvey Films didn't care, which was good.
Are there any recordings of you playing the sax up there?
You know, I have
Possibly?
to look. There's got to be some. I know I did learn this, you know, about 3 years ago before COVID hit. I played the, you know, Barry sax in the faculty jazz band that we do at our summer camp. We have a band camp in the summer here. And I you know, I played the big solo from the Maynard Ferguson's Coconut Champagne chart.
Wow.
And I learned that you could play this really hard euphonium solo that had like really difficult, you know, 20-minute big long concerto or longer, you know, and the next day people are cool. But if you play a Barry saxophone solo, the next day you are a rock star. Those kids went nuts after the Barry saxophone solo. So yeah, it's crazy, the instrument that makes such a difference. I don't understand it.
Well, it's interesting that you went from sax to, well, in a way, tuba and then euphonium. The same, I've heard it said there's a few references online that the saxophone was invented by the same guy that invented the euphonium.
Yeah, Adolph Sax.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, built the sax horn, which is
they're very related. Yeah, I don't know how the connection was. It was basically I went from saxophone to tuba my freshman year because they needed more. Actually, I didn't go to. Yeah, they wanted low brass players. They needed brass players and not so many woodwinds. But I stuck my grounds and I marched alto saxophone my freshman year of high school.
Wow.
But it was after the first couple football games I wondered, why are the woodwinds always in the back? And then, you know, then there was a choice during that first semester of band that you could either be in there was a second jazz band at my high school. We had 2 jazz band classes. Well, they didn't have enough brass players or something for the second jazz band. So you had to transfer out, or you could stay if you wanted to learn a secondary instrument. So that's where the tuba came in. And then not long after I had started playing the tuba, I was already in our top band as a saxophone player. I believe there's only 3 freshmen in that high school band. And I switched to tuba, and I was playing tuba. And there's a photo. I have a photo I can show you if you want. I'll show you.
Yes, please share.
My debut as a tuba player.
I would love to be able to put that on the blog.
It because it's people always want to see this.
You're getting a real treat here, folks.
Yeah, here we go.
Oh, I've seen that.
That's my freshman year. That's like the Besson compensating tuba.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so there's that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's a picture of me somewhere with a saxophone on here, which is kind of cute. I think it's when I got my first award. I think it's kind of important too, though, because this is how young I was when I got the first award you could get. It was the outstanding 6th grade musician. And, you know, and that's where I guess it all started for me. I realized, wow, there's prizes you could get if you do well. And oh, here's another Barry sax. This is another Barry sax solo. This is in college.
Oh, that's awesome. Is that a white coat or silver?
They're like baby blue, kind of ugly baby blue.
Oh, yeah, you're talking about the early jazz bands. They would have those baby blues.
Yeah, I don't know why we had all that. That was kind of dumb. Yeah, that was our school colors were black and gold, and here we are wearing baby blue. Maybe there was a sale.
Maybe there was. That's funny. You mentioned Maynard Ferguson, and for those that are advanced or know the name Maynard Ferguson, most people don't realize that Maynard Ferguson actually has a live video on, a YouTube video.
Oh, he's playing euphonium.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. And most people don't know that or haven't heard of that. I'll put the link below on this interview alone right there, because that brings up so many many aspects that we've covered already on this International Euphonium Summit, is bringing in jazz and creativity. Oh, that's really awesome.
There we go, 6th grade.
That's awesome.
But anyway, yeah, Maynard Ferguson is one of my heroes. So when people ask me, how on earth do you play jazz on the euphonium, or how do you understand how to play funk music so well? You know, the first person that comes to my mind is Maynard Ferguson. I know I can imagine what the Conquistador album looks like. It's that purple. It's got like a painting of him. I know that there was like Gonna Fly Now. There's, you know, I know all the tracks on there. I knew we always skipped the song that's called Mr. Mellow. We always skipped that one. But I mean, those were the things I listened to when I was a kid. So when I think about playing jazz, even from being a saxophone player to euphonium, my saxophone skills were from the jazz side, came from listening to Maynard Ferguson as well. I'm not someone who listens to like a lot of Charlie Parker. I never listened to those kind of people. All I knew about was Maynard Ferguson.
Wow, that's incredible. And I can't wait to go on a deeper dive on that with our next interview call. Man, that's
So the answer
cool.
to your question, I started playing euphonium in the high school, maybe sophomore, junior year.
That's awesome. When did you start taking private lessons? And was it with saxophone, or how did you get to?
I think I took piano lessons when we were probably before middle school. I think I did a couple years of private piano lessons with a teacher across the street. I took saxophone lessons, I believe, probably my 8th grade year with a well-known, a person who I didn't realize at the time, but his name is Fran Ludwig, and I have since looked him up. And he's played with I think he played with quite a few big names.
Mhm.
And, you know, when you're a young kid, I remember him showing me books where he was in it, and I kind of got it, but didn't necessarily get it. But I've looked him up again. But I studied with Fran Ludwig for a little while. It was $6 a half an hour for the lessons.
Wow.
When it went up to $7, my grandmother was having a fit. I took some euphonium lessons with a trumpet teacher named Jim Estes, I think my senior year. But I didn't really ever have lessons with a real euphoniumist until I was after my master's degree.
Wow.
And I was at Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp, and Earl Lauder was there. And I had a lesson with Earl Lauder over at, you know, at Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp outside. And that was my first real euphonium lesson.
What was
With a euphonium teacher.
So I'm going to make a note so we can circle back around that on the second part to this interview. Wow. So let's I would love to talk about and go deeper into your family support when you first started playing music, piano lessons. You mentioned your grandmother. How was music involved in your family before all this?
That's a great question. Yeah, my mom and dad were both in band. They went to the same Pompano Beach High School that I went to. I have an older sister, Nancy, who played flute in the band. And so we went to band practices as little kids, you know, watching. And like, she's only 2 years older than me. We went to band practices a lot. And so that was a big thing. You know, my mom and my dad were very supportive over the music side of things. My grandparents, I would say they took things up maybe a notch beyond the support that I was getting. You know, my dad was, you know, raising 4 kids and was super, you know, careful with that, where my grandparents, without them, I wouldn't be where I am today. You know, both of them have passed away, but they're ones that helped me get the money to go to the first summer camp I went to, was a canon music camp. And I got a scholarship that almost covered the whole darn thing, but I still needed a little bit of money. You know, my neighbors down the road were from North Carolina, so they drove me up and took me to the music camp. And my grandparents loaned me the money, or I babysat or whatever for people down the street. I mowed my grandparents' yard. You know, so a lot of good parental support, not always an easy path. You know, my dad, again, he was very wise about financing and, you know, always wanting, you know, being careful, which I'm thankful to, because I'm just like him. He was, you know, wasn't as into me going away to college. He thought we could go to the community school there in town, the community college, but it was my grandparents, again, that loaded me up and took me to UCF in Central Florida, where I went and started my undergraduate degree. And so it worked out.
So with that support, when did the thought cross your mind that this was what you really wanted to do in life?
I think I knew young. I don't know. I mean, I have a gift with perfect pitch and all, music of memory. I can play things back by ear. Like I would challenge, the only person probably might beat me in playing by ear back would be Marty Erickson, but other than that, playing by ear is a gift, and I known that when I was little. I mean, anything that had a saxophone on it, I was playing it, Sir Duke, anything, the theme song from My Three Sons, I mean, anything that had a saxophone in it. That song, all right, and we're coming on, we got to get it right back. There's saxophones all in that piece from the 70s. I mean, there's a great Barry sax part. I mean, I know those like inside out.
So,
but I didn't realize I had that gift until I was supposed to take like a theory exam. But back to your question, I knew all along I wanted to do it, but I remember being at the record store. There was a record store down in South Florida called Peaches back in the day. And my grandmother would take us there every so often. She'd buy us a record. And we were at the checkout, and I don't know what I was buying, but it must have been something other than buying, something that most kids would buy. And the cashier said to me, "Oh, I'm a music major at Florida State." And she said, "Don't major in music because there's no money." And I remember that being said. It made me sort of nervous, but I don't know. I knew I wanted to do it, but we took those tests when we were in high school. There was that test they take that kind of tests where your strengths are.
mm-hmm.
And mine, it was like in the psychology class. Mine was, of course, music. It was military police, law enforcement. I must be a bossy person. But so there was the signs of that. But I don't know. When I made the Florida All-State Band my senior year is when I decided I was going to do it. That's when I decided. I didn't care what anybody told me. Girls don't play low brass. There's no money in music, whatever BS they told me. I decided I'm doing it. So yeah, then when you're there at the All-State clinic, people start kind of, shopping you.
Mm-hmm.
You fill out the forms at the All-State clinic about maybe being interest. I think they must give that list to people. Maybe they used to back then, because I remember Paul Evers came up to me from Florida State, some other people, but we're at the dinner table one night and the phone rang, and it was a long cord that stretched across the table.
Uh-huh. The landline.
And it was Roy Pickering. Roy Pickering called me from the University of Central Arkansas. The local band director at the middle school, who was not my band director, had recommended to us that UCF was a great program because it was, kind of newer. They had just started a marching band, and it would be 4 hours away, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, so I ended up going to UCF because it was back then, you didn't have the internet, you didn't have email, you couldn't Google anything or whatever. So that phone call made a big difference.
That's amazing. So with the All-State Band, and this is jumping a little further ahead in the questionnaire, is with your specific experience with jazz, did your state have a All-State Jazz Band as well during high school?
I don't know if they did. I think, but when I was, I think they probably did. I played in what they called the All County Jazz Band, which was a year-round band that was over at Dillard High School. It was very special. So I played in that, and I can't remember who was the guy. We played a lot of Hank Levy music. Oh, I can't think of his name. He was former director from my high school. He's since passed away, but yeah, he ran the All County Jazz Band. So I don't know. I played, I made All County and all those different things through the years on the saxophone. I made the All County Band, I think, twice on euphonium. So it must have been my junior, senior years. So I only tried out for the All-State Band probably my senior year, and that's where I made the All-State Band on euphonium. But I never made it on saxophone, so it's weird. I was a good saxophone player, but I just think that things happen for a reason, I guess. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
So did your parents buy your first saxophone? Or
we got the first saxophone. It was a Bundy 2. No, it was a Bundy. And my dad said they would buy the first instrument. If you wanted something different, you paid for it yourself. So I remember babysitting and doing all that. And I upgraded to the Bundy 2, which probably wasn't a big upgrade, but that was what the local music store had me do. Mm-hmm. And then when I wanted that first euphonium, when I was first making that switch, I was using the school euphonium. And then when I made the All-State Band, we realized I should probably get a euphonium because I was a rock star on the euphonium early on, probably because there wasn't anybody else. Maybe it was easy, but
you still are.
But it was decided I probably should get a 4-valve instrument, and I had ordered the Yamaha 321S, and it didn't come in time for my all-state audition. I remember.
Oh
I remember
no.
the kid ahead of me at audition. I remember they must have asked for like the D flat or the E flat scale, and I could only play at 1 octave. And I thought, man, I'm never going to make it because I only, played at 1 octave. But so interestingly enough, I did make it with a 1 octave. But so yeah, I had that Yamaha horn for a while. Then my grandparents loaned me the money. I paid that off. I think it was $1,000. I think that horn cost. And
Well, a lot of people won't know the value of that money. Like the beginner student artists and the family members won't understand the younger beginner artists don't really have that gauge of how much that was back when we were starting our music journey to where it is now. I think those Yamaha 321s are probably near
4,000 now.
Oh, they're
probably.
now 4,000.
I would guess 35 or 4,000 at least, maybe 4,500. I don't know. Yeah, $1,000 was a lot. When I won this scholarship my senior year, my mom and I found out about this scholarship through the Morning Musicale, and it was like a local kind of women's organization that supported music. And when we left that day, I went there and I played Beautiful Colorado. I wore the nicest clothes I had. There were kids wearing these tails, playing Beethoven on the piano and all this stuff. And when we won that day, we couldn't believe it was $1,000. I think $1,000 now, if we did the math, it's probably about $3,000 or $4,000. I think, so yeah, people need to put in perspective. I was talking to a friend this morning. We could get McDonald's French fries or a hamburger. It was like 35 cents each.
Right.
That was a lot of money.
Right.
Now you go to McDonald's, it's like $8.
Right. I can't wait to dive deeper onto that subject in itself, but that leads this conversation and interview really well into when did scales and arpeggios really in long tones enter your warm-up routine and your daily warm-up routine?
Well, from the very beginning as a saxophone player, I was always wanting to go faster than what the class was. So I went to the back of the book and found where the fingering chart was. And, for the saxophone, it's got like the colored in keys. And I remember I learned the upper notes wrong because I just missed it. But an F would still come out with the palm keys here, but I think they want you to put all of them down, on the saxophone here. But my F was still great this way. But so I went back to the back of the book, and went from the low B flat. You could go up to the highest note you could find, And so the same thing, I think, with euphonium, I think scales were important. I was kind of the queen of the hill on the saxophone until the 8th grade year when this guy named Ken Walters moved to the school.
Wow.
And Ken, we're friends on Facebook. He was a saxophone player that moved from Deerfield Middle School, I believe. Well, he was a little better than me. And I remember I learned how to play the G scale 2 octaves because you could use those false faltissimo or whatever, false tones. He showed me how to play the F sharp, and we figured out what the notes were to squeak the G. But so, I think competition is helpful. Learning scales was really, really important. I would say I learned the scales because I wanted to be in those all region bands. And I think my middle school band director required it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these kids now, I notice here in Arkansas that they'll learn the major scales and they learn minor scales, but they're not required to do the all arpeggios. And the all-state thing asks for the chromatic scale, but they never ask for it at the audition. It lists it being on there.
Mm-hmm.
So I get incoming freshmen that don't know chromatic scale and they don't know arpeggios because it wasn't required. I think it's important to work beyond what's required of you. And I learned those high and low notes before I was supposed to. I don't even know if we ever learned those notes in class. So, I think it's important. And I always take my beginner kids and go to the very back and say, let's start on low B flat and see how far. And we put a smiley face and we put the date, and then we go up a little bit and we look at the fingerings and everything.
Chart.
We put a little smiley face and then we close it, and then we'll come back a little bit later. And I think that, it's important to, challenge yourself. If you have a teacher, having the right teacher is important. If you're not inspired and you're not looking forward to your lessons, then have a talk with your teacher. Let them know that you're not really liking the assignments. Can we do something different? Or my music's too easy or it's too hard. I felt like when I was studying with Fran Ludwig, he would write this stuff out by hand. Scrapple from the Apple. I still have it somewhere in my office.
That'd be awesome, Frank.
It was almost too hard for me. He was really into the jazz side of things, but I wasn't quite getting it as an 8th grader.
That's amazing. You hit the nail on the head right there with perspective and what the beginner artists need to like take perspective upon, and even the parents, and to really support their beginner artists that are starting out, is make sure your students are engaged, or if they're not challenged enough, or whatever, however you need to speak to your student artist for their motivation type to keep them engaged. Maybe it is that dynamic between your teacher artist and the student artist, but make sure that everyone's on the same page, and you can keep yourself accountable as well as your student artists accountable, and to really build upon. And that growth chart is the smiley face with the lowest note to the highest note from scales. That brings a different dynamic that I haven't yet covered or encountered on some of the other interviews that we've been privileged to have on this first summit. And so
I'll use a smiley face with my students now that are college students. I mean, and I don't do it every time, but if something's super great, then we get the double star, and then I had a student a couple years ago that was saying how he just really wanted me to, crack the whip on him. I'm like, well, hey, you got to come in here and play your stuff. I'll just grade you. I mean, instead of just checking stuff off, I'd give a sad, and I have done this. I give a sad face if it's something that we haven't quite achieved, and we come back to the sad faces and we fix them. And it was funny, this young man wanted me to grade him. So I basically, if you nailed it, you got a smiley face. If it was like perfect dynamics and everything, got the double stars, 2 smiley faces. And it was neat to see a grown man who's now just got married be so inspired by wanting to make sure they got the 2 smiley faces. So I think it's important, and then I was looking on Facebook a couple years ago, and Ryan Chen, who's a former student of mine from way back, I taught him in middle school in 6th grade in Maitland Middle. He was going through his Arbor book and found a sad face, and he went through that and nailed it. And then,
gave you a call.
I think you got to have some sort of an incentive. I know whenever I was in the recorder classes, you got the stars if you had done something, or, there was like a gold star or a red star, or, like the different stickers, I think that was important. I don't do stickers with my college students, but we definitely have fun with smiley faces or sad faces. And now I've gotten to where in one of my books here, I actually write in the book, what's their name? If someone plays like an awesome, like this is one of the Snedeker etudes. If someone nails it, I put their name over to the side. And this is Jake Bridgers, who nailed the mess out of this on that date. And so now, like, they can own that etude in my book as the first one to nail it. Here, this guy Jake, here he is again.
Is that this copy?
No, well, this is the tuba one.
Oh, okay.
You gotta remember, I teach tuba and euphonium. I have the etudes book too, but this is a book where I just started putting someone's name down in it. And here's Kobe Green. He nailed this one last year. So when someone comes along and they nail it, I put it in my books for it's a memory for me too. And I think the kids, these are grown young adults. I think that means a lot to them. And I tell them when they play it, I'm going to always remember how well you played this etude. So I think if people realize, your heart is into what they do, and you can convey that when it's just making them learn scales or whatever the routines are, I think it goes far.
So going back to the student that wanted you to crack the whip on them, they actually took the initiative and called themselves out to be accountable to you.
Yeah.
That's really incredible. I don't see that a lot with students, or even my own kiddos that play instruments to hold themselves accountable. They don't. I don't know where that bridge meets. That
it takes time. To get to that point in the studio. This is my start of my 9th year here, and it takes probably a good 3 or 4 years, because all the students are then yours and they're not from other teachers. But now it's to the point where, I'm going to have 29 students in my studio here at UCA. And that's like, I think there's maybe 4 minors, but everybody else is a music major. There are 6 grad students. And it's not to be bragging or anything. It's just that happens from the people see the growth of their friends who've come here. They see success of their friends who've come here. Their friends who've come here tell them, those kinds of things. But this is a tight studio. I mean, it's like we have a class that meets Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and it's like a family that gets together on those hours. Someone has a loss in their family or has hardship. There's someone that always comes here, and my drawer here, I've got cards and stuff that they know are in my drawer that they can we come get a card for so and so. And that's what you want to have, because that's where people start wanting to practice more, and the other thing that helps is if you have kids that practice a lot, then other kids see that and they feel like I should be practicing too. Now, for a while when I got here, people were practicing at home, or whatever at their apartment, which that might be the case. I know one of my students indeed practiced all the time in his apartment, but I think when you're practicing in the building, I think that's when you're committing to coming here and you're not going to be distracted and you're going to go to that room. You're going to wait in line if you have to. It's going to be your space. And I think that, others seeing that, like, I got a guy in my studio now, Joshua Fuente, who came in as a freshman, that he's in that room. He's probably down there right now. He's in there a good 7, 8, 9, 10 hours a day. Wow. I can always find him in that room. And when other kids see that happening, grad students, especially if they see that, wow, there's these young people, because sometimes, when you get a grad student, you inherit them from previous studios that might've been really, really, hard, or might've been there way up here. In this studio here, the band auditions are sometimes 2 or 3 tenths of a point away.
Wow,
and
that's
it's
pretty
competitive.
close.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Well,
you better be practicing. You better have a routine. You better be doing something, because otherwise you're going to be left behind, and you don't want to be behind. I have freshmen that'll come in, they'll be the number 10 tuba player. And when they graduate, they might be number 3 or 4. They've clawed their way up little by little. Some of them make it all the way to the top. It just depends.
Well, that's intriguing. The family aspect. Do you find with your students that have gone on to have their own studios, do you think, or have you seen them reflect that family, the familial aspect in their studios, or do you know?
Absolutely.
Okay,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's
I mean,
perfect.
one of the things I do is this. I knew I wanted to be at school. I use this receipt book here, that's, actually what this thing here is I wrote, Chris Olka took me for an airplane trip, and he had this thing on his leg. It's what you put on your leg, and it's got all the flight pilot stuff on it. And, I've always, I had Kevin Steeds as a guest artist back when I was at University of Florida, and he told me he used a receipt book. Well, this is the thing that Chris Olka had on his leg. It's got all the pilot stuff. So perfect for my receipt book that used to be loose. So now I have this. I think of Chris Olka because he took me on an airplane trip. But, I use this book pretty religiously in this thing here, and everybody gets a receipt from what their lesson assignment is, and this one here is Caden's lesson. He's doing etude number 7. I want him to buy the lower etudes books, and if, 30 minutes, bring your F tuba, and here's, somebody else. There's Greg Lower, study number 7. He's doing new number 8, so, and it's all the characters, what their assignments are. This is what my students have taken with them. Now, when they teach lessons, they use a receipt book. And they also have the family thing where they've tried to get their students to maybe go play somewhere in the community.
Yes.
Like my students to go play. Like we've got this, who's calling me? I'm not going to answer it. There's this area in town here called the Conway Human Development Center. And we go and we play there. I don't know how to hang. We have these new phones in the office and I don't know how to use it. Turn it down. Okay, I turned it down. Anyway, so yeah, we've gone to Conway Human Development Center and played. We have, gone to some adult daycare centers. The grad students here have a requirement where they have to go play and do something community service related every semester. I saw that on one of Deanna Swoboda's syllabi one time. I said, oh, we're doing that too. But anyway, so yeah, they take things from me that I don't know. They don't always call back and say, oh, I do this because you did it. But I do know that because their students, I know that I've talked to their students. I know when I was a doctoral student at Michigan State, this was like 24 years ago. I actually had to do his skills test, which was a skills packet that you did kind of mid-semester. So you know darn well I embraced that. I wanted to get all the high points on that, you know, and I'll grab that. I'll show you that. Right where it is. You know, and you had to, you know, his skills packet had like this grid that you had to do, you know,
Oh,
you had
wow.
to like based on the tempo and everything. Well, of course, I added more lines at the bottom. This is how Gail works.
That's awesome. Hey,
But you know, so it's got skill things in it. Well, of course, I've made my own now. I took some ideas from his, and we do that, and it's a way to give everybody a packet of different. It's got like 3 lip slurs, like 3 different arpeggio like thing. No, they're scale like things. The modal scales are in there. The chromatic scales. There's there's thirds or fourths in there. There's a finger pattern that I wrote that I want them to think about their fingers. There's I make them all learn the B flat blues. So I know my students, if they aren't using my exact skills test, which I told them they're welcome to, they've made something like that. So yeah, they carry it on. And the family tradition, I don't know if any of them has a big enough studio. I mean, you could have 3 or 4 students and it's still a family. But if you only have 1 or 2 because you're at a smaller school, it's a little tricky. But being in a large studio, you've got to run a tight ship, and everyone needs to get along and support each other. You know, on occasion, I'll have people that are really, really advanced. Like I mentioned, my Joshua Fuentes, who came in here, and he'd never had lessons ever before in his life. And
wow,
he's amazing. You know, and then there are students that have never had lessons in their life, and they're behind on other things. And those are my favorite students, actually. Joshua is a challenge because I got to keep him from burning out, and I got to keep him from, you know, overdoing. I often have to make him take a day off, but I got to keep him entertained. He's quick, you know. And the same thing with my grad students. I got to keep them, you know, not getting burnout, not trying to. They want to learn stuff quick. Any of them. Those younger ones that are behind, those are the ones you see the most product, the most growth.
That's amazing. So with Joshua Fuentes, do you see I would love to interview him at some point.
You should.
It'd be really amazing. Hint, hint. Y'all would be in for a treat. I know that for a fact. I would love to know, as a studio teacher, a studio professor, have you seen family support from their family come in to augment your studio practices and such?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, first of all, my mom, every time that my studio goes on a road trip, she buys the hotel rooms for everybody.
Wow.
And this last trip, I was able to finagle the school to pay for the hotel. And then my mom gave every kid $100 spending money. And that was, I had 17 kids go to iTech. So, you know, less than $2 grand. I have some students, and I won't mention names, but their parents have supported other students in my studio that have hardship.
Yeah.
And one of my alumni who's graduated is Sam Revis. His parents, you know, the Revises have gave $1,000 to my studio to use for whatever we wanted to. And Sam has graduated. He's doing a doctorate with Deanna Sabota at Arizona State.
Yeah, yes.
So they live in this area, and they continue to support what we do. I do that Toad Suck Bucks thing we do. We play Oktoberfest stuff. I write a new polka every year named after a goofy town in Arkansas. We've got Toad Suck Buck polka. We've got Pickles Gap. We've got there's the Possum Grape polka. We've got Turkey Scratch. We've got the Flippin' polka. I mean, every year there's a new polka.
What's this year?
This year, I think they want the Friendship. I gotta look. They're either Friendship polka because there's Friendship Arkansas. I gotta look. I have it written down somewhere what it is this year. But anyway, what happens to that? Then the community comes to that. Well, my dang neighbors who are, you know, live out in the woods where I live, they'll come and they'll write a check and put a couple $100 in the sousaphone bell, and they support and give back. So it's beyond just the parents. But one of my students' parents that's in my studio gave money for another student. So yeah,
that's awesome. Paying it forward.
Yes.
That's awesome. So as far as going back to Earl Outer, were there any principles or things that you garnered and gleaned from when you were studying with him in that period of time, did you take on and make your own and improve upon, or still use today?
Well, you got to remember, I had one lesson with Earl Louder. It was just in that summer. And I was looking to be beat up and torn into shreds because I was nervous playing for a euphonium player. I'd already suckered all the tuba and bass trombone players I had studied with. And he basically didn't have a whole lot to say. He said it was great, didn't give me a whole lot of feedback other than, was very encouraging and complimenting. And all I can think is I must have been doing a lot of things right. Where I did learn from Earl Louder, where I studied from him the most, was when I played in the New Sousa band with him. Keith Bryan's New Sousa band came through Orlando at one point, and they were playing at the, Bob Carr Auditorium. And at that point, Keith was bringing like a nucleus of people. There might have been like the principal euphonium, the principal flute, there was, and then the union, Orlando's union, the musicians union hired the other ones. So I got the call to play that. And that was where I actually got to play with Earl, and he sat on this side of me. And we continued to play together, I think, over 20 years in New Sousa band. And that's where I studied with Earl Louder, is sitting in the band and hearing the marches. And and I've got a boatload of recordings on my phone that I would put on the stand between us so you could hear what we sounded like on the stage. And Earl was I would say my biggest teacher of the euphonium, just because we played together for so many years in that band.
And that's what I hear a lot of from other interviews across the board with, we go back to Luke Spiros, to Dr. Don Pallmeyer, and all those that are in these magnificent opportunities, just sitting next to another euphonium artist that, that experience is so rich. And
hearing what they do in that situation. I like to go sit in with my students. Like when we have enough students, often we've had this euphonium choir. I think we had 10 or 11 in it last semester. So we've actually take all the tubas and we divide, during the semester, the tubas go and they study the tuba excerpts. They do orchestral excerpts. And so the euphoniums, what we end up doing is we do a euphonium choir, and it makes everybody read B flat treble clef. And then we do the choir. And so the students will conduct, they'll have the grad students conduct. So I'll sit in, and I think the kids get a gas when I sit by them, because, I think they're already playing really well, but then they're wondering, what's they call me G Rob here. My email is G Robertson. So you might hear the word G Rob, but yeah, if I sit by them in the ensemble, it's a big deal. So it's fun. I get a gas out of, the reaction that they have, just with me, just doing a normal thing we would normally do it. They just think it's a real big deal.
So what are 3 things that you've learned and applied to when you first started learning euphonium that you teach your students now?
Things that I've learned and applied. Well, when I was an undergraduate, I had a great teacher. Roy Pickering was my teacher, but he didn't necessarily keep a track of what we were supposed to do for the next week. So if I didn't practice like the Bordoni etude, I wouldn't bring the book, and he wouldn't ask for it. That's where this came from. It holds them accountable. It makes the student knows. And believe me, if they leave here and they forget their sheet, they're like, oh my gosh, I forgot my sheet. Can you send me a screenshot of it?
Wow.
That's like their prescription for the week. The other thing that I learned was that my teacher probably couldn't remember what everybody's assignments was. I know Brian Bowman used a grid where he wrote things in, a long grid, kind of similar to this with everyone's name. It was a long thing. I remember that. And for me, this carbon copy is my receipt. So I flip over and I'm like, okay, did you get in touch with the pianist? Did you order the Bordoni book? And everything I wrote down. Or they'll say sometimes, well, I didn't know. And I'm like, oh, and I go flip. Oh, on February, whatever, so yeah. So it really, that's one of the things I took away from it. It makes me a better teacher, makes them better students. No one is ever late. No one misses their lessons here because they value them, because they know I'm ready for them. I'm prepared. I know I was in some lessons with, when I was studying with Harvey Phillips, he was very busy. He was, working as an Instrumentalist magazine, editor and all that during my years when I was there in a very large studio. And we always kind of dreaded it when the phone would ring, because when it would ring, it was often Doc Severinsen, and it was Joshua Bell one time, and so sometimes that would take away from your time. So to me, I have a phone that has, a cover on it. So it's out of sight, you know, I don't see it lighten up, I don't see anything. So I think that I've learned that from not liking someone being distracted during the lessons. I like that skills test thing because I think that is a, you know, a good sort of, I don't hear them play that in their lessons every week. That's, you get the sheet of things, and then that first mid-semester time, we kind of grade them on like the tempo there and the clarity of it. And then you have the grid that shows like rabbits. Hang on.
Y'all take in what's going on behind the scenes here with all the history that's on Dr. Robertson's wall there while she's away.
Yeah, here you'll see, I don't want to show anybody's name, but you know, here's someone's, and they got some sad faces on there because we want to be better at those. You know, here's someone, they've all long graduated here, but you'll see, where is it? Find someone. This is someone, he won't care if we show this. He's graduating, he's wonderful, but you can see the colors are based on the first semester.
Wow.
So you see the bubbles, like the first one was the pencil mark, and the second one was the pink, the third was the green, and the last one was the yellow. And you can see the, you know, the progress from the pencil to the pink to, you know, on down. So this doesn't give them an A or a B. All it is sort of like if you and I wanted to get better at losing weight or bench pressing, you know, we'd get on the scale, we'd say, this is how much I weigh today, and we weigh the next semester. Or we'd see, you know, we got this much weight on the bench press, do we move the peg down? So this is actually, you know, it's supposed to be a self-motivating thing.
Yeah.
I know when I was in the Phil Cinder studio, he would post on the wall out there based on like maybe a couple numbers from your student ID. He would post, you know, the order and the ranking of it. I did that for a while here, and we had the scale king or the scale queen who had the top scale points. We had the lip slur, you know, person. But I stopped doing that because I had some students that were really behind other people, and I didn't think it was gonna be super motivating for them. If the studio is real tight and everybody's kind of similar, but if you got someone who comes in that, you know, like now with, you know, the COVID kind of set some people back, I wouldn't want them to feel defeated, even if no one knew that was them. Right. So I stopped posting it. I don't even total up the points anymore. All we do is we look at those lines, and it's individually.
Yeah,
I would say I stole that from Phil and have kind of adapted that and, you know, made it sort of my own thing. And I like that because even when a kid auditions here, I can give them that skills packet. And if I never see them again, they'll leave here with a routine. Some people do not have a routine, and they need to have a routine. And, you know, and if you want, we can put a link on there. I'll email you the skills packet for B flat, C tuba, F tuba, E flat tuba, bass clef, and treble clef euphonium. You know, and and it's a packet like this, and then it has that grid sheet that we saw at the front. This is like the new grid sheet here. You know, that's different. You know, it's
awesome.
Done different.
Yeah.
But you'll see there's an incentive for people to try to get better. I had one of my Smarty Pants' kids ask me, he had been here for 4 years, and he wanted another skills test because he felt like he had mastered the other one. Caleb Taylor, he's awesome. He's band director here in Arkansas now, I'm not afraid to say. So I wrote the advanced skills test.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that one, I haven't had anyone really super dive into that one other than Mr. Cole Cavanaugh, who's a former student of mine who now is the adjunct here at UCA. He does it on a regular basis. He probably can play that dang advanced skills thing better than I can. And I wrote it.
That's awesome. I mean, that's any goal as a teacher and as a mentor is have your student become better than where you were at. That's exactly what this International Euphonium Summit is for. It's for us as those who have lived this dreamscape, this dream career that we've always wanted, and to impart our knowledge and skills and everything that we've learned into implanting that into these beginner artists that are just learning their way in such to where they don't have to figure out these things, and they can already apply these practices, these routines, every facet into what they want to do. and to get there and to be established sooner than instead of just, oh, there's a dead end, there's a turnaround, there's a, a roundabout, there's a straight path, instead of going, okay, that's a hit, that's a miss, that's a miss, that's a hit. That's spectacular. Thank you so much for imparting.
Well, I mean, we gotta motivate them. We gotta inspire them. We have to lead by example. I think back to Phil Cinder. He was at school most nights. That light was on upstairs. You knew what office his was. My students, they know when I'm here. It's funny. I'll get a call and they'll say, "Gee, Rob, are you on campus?" And I know dang well they're standing outside and they're looking at my car. I get here early in the morning because I start my lessons are at 8. I'll start my first one at 8. So I might be here 6:45, 7, depends. Sometimes I go to the gym before I actually start teaching. And so my car is in one of those 5 spaces out front, probably 4 of the 5 days of the week. So they know I'm here and they know that I'm here. One time I rode with our department chair to the Allstate clinic and we were setting that up, but I left my car here and people were calling me to make sure I was okay because it had been here. Well, I mean, it was like 10 o'clock at night and my car was still in the parking lot. Yeah. But yeah, I think leading by example, those things are really helpful, having tools, self-evaluating kinds of things, motivating yourself. It's not a competition, because if I had, when it was a competition, then I felt like that wasn't good for everybody.
The skills test that you bring up in this interview is a lot like what what happens to all the School of Music entrants in the military system, in the military band system, even the audition process. We have benchmarks that we have to hit. There's a certain standard. And then we have F1, F2. F2 is the graduating benchmark, where you either get your Charlie, which is a 3.0 or above system, or you're just barely making it at a 2.8. I don't know if they've increased that since my time at the School of Music 20 plus years ago. It's really fascinating that you have that. Do your students have they seen that mock audition process to imitate that skills test that you have? I'm just curious.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I know that when they leave here, that they often they write me and I hear back, I'm still working on the skills test, or, thank you for this. I mean, I was at the IET this summer with Adam Fry and the gang over there in Atlanta. And a man wrote to me, right off the bat, I think that day or whatever, he said that he really enjoyed my master class. It was, his favorite thing. Well, then he wrote me again. He said, that skills thing you gave us is the best thing I've ever seen at any workshop. And he wrote me the other day and was asking me if I'd written the rock hopper, euphonium and tuba solo based on some TV show. I mean, so this guy still follows because he really liked the skills test. And he's let me know. And I think I don't know if he's asked me for the advanced one yet. I told him about the advanced skills test. And I said, well, let me know when you've mastered this. But I won't give it to him for, like, I'm going to make him wait. I don't want to give him the other one because then they won't really, look at the other one. But I think it trickles on beyond what you would think. I think people do take things, as a private teacher, as a university professor, sadly, when it comes to the time of the year to do those faculty evaluations, where every class you do that, my students don't often do them.
Huh.
And I asked them, I'm like, what? And they go, well, we love everything you do, G Rob, blah, blah, blah. And I think they think it's only supposed to be used for complaining, right, that someone's English isn't good, or maybe the teacher, the assignments are too hard, or, it could be anything, because they may complain because it's a hard class. But I don't get any of those filled out. When I hear back from my students is after they graduate, and either they've gone on to maybe a master's somewhere else or a doctorate somewhere else, or they're working somewhere, and they realize, oh my gosh, all those things you did for us, I'm so sorry, I never thanked you. And that's the thing. I get kids that say, well, how do you get all the students to show up? Because I'm teaching now and I can't get the kids to practice. I'm like, well, you got to jump, you got to do a lot of cheerleading. You got to use the word we. I always say, we can fix these scales. Let's work on them. We can do this. I don't say you need to do this and you need to fix that. I think that sounds rude, but we can make the bed together. I'll show you how I would do. That's how my mom taught us, and then eventually it's get in there and make your bed, but
right.
And it might have been get in there and get your A in there and make your bed at one point from my mom too. But
That-
anyway,
that-
yeah, so I think that, you just gotta, it's a long circle of how things work. Um, like I said earlier, leading by example, doing the right things, being honest with your students, being reliable, and just being there for them. I mean, they have my cell phone number. I tell them, if you need me for something, email me. If you kind of need me for something quick, then send me a text. If you need me right now, I don't care what time of the day it is, call me.
That's awesome.
And they will. And I get a text from someone the other day. I felt bad. We have a new freshman that came in here, to Neil, and I must have been on the, who knows what. I just come back from riding a bike, and I was in my junk clothes, and I was embarrassed because I'm like, there are students who've been here 4 years and never see me outside of my professional attire. And here I am in my bike shorts and stuff. And so I was trying to issue these incoming freshmen instruments and giving them lockers and stuff. And I gave him a C tuba on accident. And he was saying how he felt like it was the wrong key, or, something was weird. And I'm like thinking, what? And I thought, I better go over there and make sure I didn't give him a C tuba. And of course I had given him a C tuba. So yeah. But, being accessible is important. I when I went back to do my doctorate, and I know this is off your subject, I was looking for a school. I was Gail Robertson at that point. I've been at Disney for 10 years, and, I had a reputation. I'd won, lots of awards and accolades. So I was like not the typical student. I wanted to go somewhere where someone was going to really inspire me. I didn't want to go there and then make me do their job. Like, so to say, here, you run the studio. I wasn't doing that. I wanted to be somewhere where and I got the perfect place with Phil Sender. But I felt like I wanted to find a school that had a faculty brass quintet. Because if there was a faculty brass quintet there, it meant those people got along at least enough to rehearse, and bring them in the room. And that's important. And when students come here, I take them to try, if I can, to meet the other faculty. I can summons on the group me I have in my studio. Hey, there's a freshman here today. Can anyone in the building? Within minutes, the elevator comes with 4 or 5 kids. Wow. So that is important. More than them being able to reach me, they need to be able to reach each other.
So I know that we discussed in the transcriptions before this, and you're about up on time here. So one last thing before we sign off for this segment of our interview is there's a chapter of Kappa Kappa Psi in Tau Beta Sigma on your campus, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Are they involved in that familial aspect as well?
I haven't been able to really get the Tau Beta Sigma to connect nearly as tight as I had with my studio, because my studio, I see them every week, and I see them like 3 times a week, many of them, because I see them all at least 3 times a week because we have studio class. Our Mondays is the playing for each other studio class, Wednesdays the ensemble, and then Fridays is chamber stuff. But Tau Beta Sigma is very self-sufficient. That I'm not needed there as much, I don't think, is the way I am, like, because I'm in charge of this year. And it's gonna be different this year coming up with Tau Beta Sigma. I've already gotten with the president. It's been like an earlier start. I inherited this Tau Beta Sigma from the former saxophone professor who'd been here for like 30 years.
Wow.
And so it's been kind of an ease into the situation. I think I've been in charge of them now 3 or 4 years. And it's been good, but we don't have the same family that I have created. They have one that they already had created from Jackie Lamar. So I don't want to take credit for something that I haven't done there.
Right.
Now, these kids are all sort of under my watch now as the advisor. And I think it's going to be it's going to step things up.
That's amazing. Well, I appreciate your contribution, as well as on behalf of those watching, from family members of student artists or professional artists, maybe even your mom, to those that are like really wanting to progress themselves regardless of instrument, because this really transcends every aspect of a musician's life, or even an organizational aspect of life in general, and how to organize oneself to really take ownership and accountability. And I really appreciate your time and contribution to this International Euphonium Summit, Dr. Gail Robertson. Thank you so much.
Well, we'll have to definitely get back together, because I know I answered way few questions than you wanted, and I know I probably answered way more things than you asked. But I hope that anyone watching this will see not only my enthusiasm, but we'll also see Nicholas's enthusiasm for making this possible. If I made a blog out there and posted me talking all this stuff, it'd be pretty boring. So I really appreciate you making it very interesting And I hope people are enjoying our conversation here, and I hope you feel part of it. And, you know,
Oh,
we will
absolutely.
definitely continue on with this. So if you have questions or whatever, send them on.
Or put them down in the links down in the comments below. There's going to be tons of links. There's going to be I have a huge vision for all this and for future Euphonium summits to possibly having everybody come on a summer cruise as a Euphonium summit.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
So I'm putting some feelers out there because I really want the family aspect, and I've spoken to several others, and I can't wait to share that with everyone else once that seems to be developed more. It's all about you, not myself or Dr. Robertson. It's about the future legacy, the families that are supporting their student artists, to supporting their spouse that or their partner or their loved one who really want to get to understand this weird instrument called what a baritone, what a mini tuba, no, a baby tuba, no, euphonium.
Oh, yeah.
So thank you so much. We'll sign off here and we'll continue the conversation soon enough. Thank you all for stopping by.
Thank you.